Have you ever wondered, how is it that one Buddha, one path to awakening, could give rise to three different traditions of Buddhism? One monk walks slowly inward, step by steady step, toward personal liberation. Another vows to stay in this world until every single being is free from suffering. And a third carries with him mysterious, ancient teachings, believing that enlightenment isn't somewhere far away, but found right herein, this very breath, in this very body and mind. Three monks, sitting under the same tree, meditating in silence, their posture upright and still, but their intentions are worlds apart. That's Theravāda, a tradition rooted in the original teachings of the Buddha, focused on individual liberation through insight. That's Mahāyāna, great vehicle of boundless compassion, walking alongside all beings. And that's Vajrayāna, diamond path, mystical and profound, rising from the Tibetan mountains with powerful methods of transformation. So, what caused these differences? Was it a misunderstanding of the Buddha's words? A conflict over doctrine? Not exactly. The story begins over 2,500 years ago, when the Buddha passed into final nirvana beneath the sala trees. He left behind a treasure of wisdom but wrote nothing down, appointed no successor, and created no formal organization. What remained were his disciples, their memory, their oral recitation, and their sincere hearts. For a while, everything held together. But as Buddhism began to spread beyond India through forests, across oceans, over mountains, it met new cultures, new languages, new belief systems. And like a river branching into new lands, Buddhism began to evolve. In the tropical regions of Southeast Asia, monks preserved the early teachings strictly. This became Theravāda, the way of the elders. In the vast East Asian world, sages and masters expanded the view into something grander, Mahāyāna, great vehicle. And up in the highlands of Tibet, where nature was raw and rituals ancient, Buddhism fused with local practices, giving birth to Vajrayāna, the diamond vehicle, mysterious and potent. What's fascinating is, each tradition genuinely believes it holds the truest essence of the Buddha's path. So which one is right? Or maybe, just maybe, like a gem, with many facets, each tradition reflects a different angle of timeless wisdom. Now, let's begin our journey into these three major traditions: Theravāda, Mahāyāna, and Vajrayāna. Each one beautiful, each one deep, each one capable of leading us home to the pure, still awareness at the heart of our being. 1. Vajrayāna doesn't reject desire or emotion. It transforms them into the fuel for awakening. In today's world, we all wrestle with emotions: sudden anger, unnamed longing, lingering pain we don't know how to share. Most of us grew up believing that in order to be peaceful or spiritual, we need to get rid of these emotions, as if they're obstacles, as if they're flaws. But there's a path in Buddhism that doesn't ask us to suppress what we feel. It doesn't shame desire or label anger as failure. That path is Vajrayāna, often called Tantric Buddhism. It's known as the diamond vehicle, because like a diamond-sharp, indestructible light, uses pressure, heat, even chaos to bring forth clarity and light. Someone once asked, how can desire possibly lead to enlightenment? Isn't desire the root of suffering? That's a common question. But Vajrayāna doesn't say desire is the enemy. It says how we relate to it makes all the difference. Think of a burning match. Uncontrolled, it burns your fingers, but used wisely, it lights the dark. Vajrayāna calls this cooking gold with fire, meaning instead of throwing out our intense energies, we learn to channel them into compassion, insight, and awakening. It's not an easy path. Because instead of running from darkness, Vajrayāna asks us to step into it, to face it, to know it, and to slowly free ourselves from within it. The practitioner learns not to fear anger, but to observe it, like an old friend. Not to suppress desire, but to redirect its energy toward meditation, service, and awareness. In daily life, pain may be the only thing we have left to work with. Vajrayāna says, even that pain can become the raw material of awakening if we hold it with presence and wisdom. So maybe, instead of saying, I'm too emotional to follow a spiritual path, we begin to see that very emotion, maybe the doorway, the invitation, the fire that purifies. But how did such a radical path emerge? What happened in Tibet that allowed this ancient tradition to rise, blending Indian teachings with indigenous rituals into something so powerful and unique? We'll dive into that mystery in the next part of our journey. 2. Theravāda, the personal path rooted in sila, samadhi, and panya. Some paths in life are loud and fast, where people rush to find the light, chase after answers, seek something beyond themselves. But there's another kind of path, a quieter one, like steady footsteps across a mountain trail knot, taking you farther outside, but deeper within. That's the Theravāda path, often called the Way of the Elders. Not because it's only for the old, but because it carefully preserves the original teachings of the Buddha, passed down faithfully for thousands of years. If Buddhism were a great tree, Theravāda would be the roots firmly grounded, holding the whole thing steady in the storms of time. What's striking about Theravāda is that it doesn't promise miracles. There are no secret mantras, no flashy rituals, no dramatic displays. Just 3 simple steps like 3 stones showing the way: ethical conduct, sila, mental concentration, samadhi, and wisdom, panya. Keeping ethical precepts isn't about restriction, it's about purification. Like water settling after the mud sinks, only then can we see clearly to the bottom. Meditation isn't about escaping reality, it's about returning to it with a steady heart. And from that stillness, wisdom arises, not the kind you find in books, but a deep insight into suffering, impermanence, and the absence of a fixed self. Theravāda doesn't rush. It's not for someone chasing quick fixes, but for those who walk with patience. One step at a time, it offers something profound. Like climbing a mountain, shirt damp with sweat, yet each step opens up a wider view, not just of the world, but of the self. There's an old story. A student once asked a senior monk, "How long will it take me to become enlightened?" The monk replied, 10 years. The student said, "What if I try twice as hard?" Then 20. "What if I give it everything I've got?" 30. Confused, the student asked, "Why does it take longer the harder I try?" The monk smiled, "Because the more you're chasing, the more your mind is looking outward. Enlightenment only comes when the mind becomes still enough to see clearly." That's the way of Theravāda. Note, flashy, not glamorous, but solid as stone. It doesn't promise to lift you into the sky, but it promises to keep your feet grounded so that you can truly see the path under your own steps. And maybe that simplicity is its greatest gift, the invitation to come home to yourself. 3. The 3 traditions of Buddhism are not opposed. In spiritual life, just like in everyday life, people often fall into debates. Which path is right? Who's doing it wrong? Is this tradition authentic, or is that one a distortion? But if we pause long enough and listen deeply, we might realize something simple, yet powerful. Buddhism isn't a competition to see who understands the Buddha best. It's a journey inward, and for each person, that journey looks different. Over the past 2,000 years, Buddhism has branched into 3 major traditions: Theravāda, Mahāyāna, and Vajrayāna. 3 paths not in conflict, but like three trails up the same mountain. Each one has its terrain, its challenges, but the summit is the same: freedom from suffering, full awakening. Those who follow Theravāda walk steadily, day by day, with ethical practice, meditation, and wisdom, like climbing the rocky side of a mountain slow but sure. Mahāyāna practitioners carry the hearts of all beings with them, walking not just for themselves, but for everyone, like trekking through a dense forest with every step a vow to help others. And Vajrayāna? That's the steep slope, quick, powerful, and risky. If practiced with mindfulness and precision, it can bring rapid transformation. But without care, one might stumble. From working with many Western practitioners, it's clear: people don't come to Buddhism because of tradition, they come because they're suffering. And there's no single formula that fits all. Some thrive in the calm, structured discipline of Theravāda. Others are deeply moved by Mahāyāna's compassion in action. And still others awaken through Vajrayāna's symbolic and emotional methods. So when someone asks, which path is the true one? Maybe the answer isn't theoretical. Maybe it's experiential. The true path is the one that awakens you. The real path is the one that brings you home. Imagine three people trying to cross a river. One walks a rope bridge, another rows a boat, the third swims straight through. Each method has its risks and strengths. But if all three make it to the other shore, who's right? The three traditions of Buddhism are like that. Not enemies, not rivals, just different doors, leading into the same quiet room of peace. And what's beautiful is, today, in retreats, in classes, in meditation halls around the world, you can see these paths side by side, not excluding each other, but supporting each other. 4. The Mahāyāna tradition was born from the vow of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, Kwanam. There's a vow that echoes across time, still alive today. A great bodhisattva stood before the gates of nirvana, that place beyond suffering, beyond the endless cycle of birth and death. The door was open, peace was calling, and yet he stopped. He turned back and looked at the world, a mother holding her child, silently crying, a young person surrounded by crowds, but feeling deeply alone. An old man lying in a hospital bed, just waiting for someone to say a kind word. He saw them all, and he made a vow: as long as even one being still suffers, I will not enter nirvana. That bodhisattva was Avalokiteshvara, known throughout the East as Kwanam, the embodiment of infinite compassion. And from that vow, a new tradition of Buddhism was born: Mahāyāna, the great vehicle. A path not meant just for one person, but for everyone. A practice not just for your own liberation, but for the awakening of all beings. This is the soul of Mahāyāna. We don't walk alone. Instead of focusing only on personal enlightenment, Mahāyāna practitioners carry the bodhisattva vow in their hearts. They practice not to escape the world, but to be fully present within it, in the pain, in the confusion, in the fragile stories of everyday life, planting seeds of awakening wherever they go. In the Buddha's teachings, there's a beautiful word, karuna, compassion. But in Mahāyāna, compassion is not just a feeling, it's a commitment. It's a choice to never leave anyone behind. A scholar once said, if Theravāda is the light that shines inward, then Mahāyāna is the warmth that wraps around the world. And you can feel that truth. So many people today don't come to Buddhism looking for enlightenment. They just want to be a better person, to love more, to live with purpose. Mahāyāna gives them a name for that longing: the bodhisattva path. You don't have to be a monk. You don't have to be perfect. All it takes is waking up each morning and asking, how can I ease someone's suffering today? That's already the beginning of the path. In Mahāyāna, compassion isn't some lofty idea. It shows up when you listen without interrupting, when you forgive yourself, when you choose silence over reaction, when you look at someone and say with your eyes, "I see you. I know you're hurting too." And maybe, just maybe, it's because of that ancient vow that even now, in a world that often feels overwhelming and fractured, we can still find refuge, not in rigid doctrine, but in a heart that knows how to love. 5. The global spread of Tibetan Buddhism. After 1959, sometimes what feels like a loss becomes a turning point. Sometimes what seems like a tragedy opens the door for light to break through. In 1959, the world changed for Tibet. A land that had remained hidden for centuries suddenly found itself invaded. Monasteries crumbled, monks scattered, and thousands of people began crossing the frozen Himalayas not to save wealth or status, but to protect the one thing they could not afford to lose: the Dharma. They carried no gold, no power, only their spiritual tradition, the deep, sacred teachings passed silently from teacher to student for generations. When His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, escaped to India, he was more than a leader in exile. He became the guardian of a profound wisdom tradition. And from that moment, something extraordinary happened. Tibetan Buddhism began to spread across the world. No longer hidden behind mountain walls and ancient gates, these once secret Vajrayāna teachings began appearing in meditation centers in New York, London, Paris, in tea rooms, classrooms, and university halls. There's a kind of paradox here, a gentle, bittersweet irony. The very destruction of a homeland gave wings to its wisdom. What was once tucked away in Himalayan silence now reached the hearts of people far and wide. And here's what's really touching. Many Westerners, raised in cultures of consumerism, science, and individualism, found in Tibetan Buddhism something they didn't even know they were missing: a deep sense of connection between body and mind, between spirit and world, between presence and peace. The chants, the mandalas, the visualizations and rituals, they weren't just exotic anymore. They became tools for healing in an exhausted world. And this didn't happen because of clever strategy. It happened because of sincere people. Monks who lost their country, but never lost their compassion. Teachers who didn't preach like prophets, they shared from their lived experience. So when we look at the journey of Tibetan Buddhism, from mountaintops to city centers, it's hard not to feel moved. Because sometimes the things we think are most fragile are actually the ones that can travel the farthest as long as we carry them with love. 6. Each tradition highlights a unique aspect of the spiritual path. There's something beautiful about Buddhism. The deeper you reflect on it, the lighter your heart feels. No one's asking you to be like anyone else. There's no one-size-fits-all model that everyone must follow. Instead, the Dharma is like a full table of offerings, and you're invited to choose the dish that best suits your nature, your temperament, your life circumstances. The three major Buddhist traditions, Theravāda, Mahāyāna, and Vajrayāna, are like three different main courses on that spiritual table. Each one unique, but deeply complementary. For someone who needs clarity, step-by-step guidance like relearning how to walk after years of being lost, Theravāda offers a slow but steady path. Here, wisdom lights the way. And that wisdom doesn't come from reading a ton or talking a lot. It grows from quiet practice, from observing yourself every day. When the mind becomes steady, wisdom naturally arises like the sun shining through after the fog lifts. Then there are those who carry a big question deep inside. Not just me, but everyone. All beings are suffering. Who will help them? For hearts like that, Mahāyāna is home. It turns compassion from a fleeting feeling into a living vow. Through small acts, a smile, a gentle look, truly listening, Mahāyāna practitioners turn everyday life into a sacred space. Every step they take becomes a silent prayer. May all beings be at peace. And then there are people living in a fast-paced world, flooded with intense emotions and a deep urge to transform now, not 10 lifetimes from now. They want to practice right here, right now, in this very body. For them, Vajrayāna opens a powerful path where meditation is not just about sitting still, but immersing oneself in imagery, sound, visualization, transforming the mind at its root. Vajrayāna doesn't deny anger, sadness, or desire. It invites the practitioner to turn those forces into fuel for awakening. 3 traditions, 3 focus points: wisdom, compassion, and transformation. They're not fighting for which is best. They don't cancel each other out. They're like 3 branches of the same river, each bringing water from a different source, but all flowing into the same ocean of awakening. Some people walk with reason they need to understand before they can trust. Others walk with the heart they need to feel before they can believe. And some need a powerful shake to break free from the loops they've been stuck in too long. The Dharma holds space for all of them. And maybe that's what makes Buddhism feel less like a closed building and more like an open garden where everyone can find the path that fits their own heart. 7. Blending traditions. In the modern world raises a big question. Today, if someone wants to learn meditation or explore Buddhism, they don't need to leave home, cross borders, or learn ancient languages. With just a few clicks, a quick search, they'll find hundreds of retreats and teachings from all traditions right at their fingertips. In a way, it's amazing. Theravāda, Mahāyāna, Vajrayāna, paths once separated by geography, language, and history now show up together in a single weekend retreat in New York or an online Dharma class in California. One person can practice Theravāda-style insight meditation, chant mantras from Tibetan Vajrayāna, and cultivate a bodhisattva heart in Mahāyāna spirit all at the same time. The freedom to choose is a gift of this era. But with that freedom comes a tough question. Is this cross-blending a spiritual revolution, or are we at risk of watering down the essence of each tradition? Some people, eager and curious, jump from practice to practice, like browsing stalls in a market, picking a little here, trying a bit there, only to end up more confused than before. Because in the world of inner practice, more variety doesn't always mean more depth. One elderly meditation master once said, "If you sharpen a needle in one spot long enough, it can pierce anything. But if you poke here and there without focus, you'll only scratch the surface." That may be what's happening with many practitioners today, moving across traditions, but never staying long enough to truly transform. On the flip side, this blending also shows that Buddhism still carries the Buddha's flexible spirit, always adapting to the needs, readiness, and lives of those who seek. In the sutras, the Buddha compared his teachings to a raft meant to help you cross the river, not to be carried on your head forever. So if blending teachings genuinely helps someone suffer less, live more mindfully, is that wrong? The answer doesn't lie in how many teachings we collect, but in this: are we actually practicing? Are we living the teachings in daily life? Do we really know where we're going? Blending paths isn't a bad thing. But without foundation, without depth, and without respect for each tradition, it can turn the spiritual journey into a surface-level sightseeing tour. Pretty, exciting, but going nowhere. 8. Enlightenment isn't about escaping the world. There's a common misunderstanding that many people carry when they first come to Buddhism, the idea that enlightenment is some kind of escape, that it's a state of floating above life, free from suffering, detached from all the messiness, the struggles, the noise, the love, the pain, the chaos. But if we listen more carefully to the Buddha's teachings and really look at how all 3 major traditions, Theravāda, Mahāyāna, and Vajrayāna, approach liberation, we begin to see something quite different. Enlightenment isn't about leaving the world behind. It's about seeing it clearly. And once we see clearly, we become truly free not because suffering disappears, but because our hearts are no longer pulled in every direction. We stop reacting blindly. It's the freedom of someone standing in the middle of a storm and remaining still. The freedom of someone who knows how to love without clinging, to let go without running away. In the Theravāda tradition, the practitioner trains in seeing things as they are through mindfulness of breath, sensations, and thoughts. With ethical discipline, concentration, and wisdom, they slowly peel away the illusions, seeing the impermanence and selflessness of everything. And from that clarity, attachment dissolves. There's no need to run, just a need to see, and no longer be trapped. Mahāyāna goes even further. Instead of retreating, the practitioner turns toward the world, stepping into others' suffering with the heart of a bodhisattva. Like Avalokiteshvara, who vowed never to enter nirvana while even one being is still in pain. But that doesn't mean the bodhisattva is suffering. They act from compassion, not burden. Their freedom doesn't come from avoiding life. It comes from showing up fully, with deep presence and a light heart. Then Vajrayāna offers yet another path, bold and transformative. It says, "You don't have to wait for another lifetime. Awakening is possible here and now, in this very body. But only if you know how to work with the raw energy of your emotions, your desires, your inner chaos, and turn it into wisdom. This is a fierce kind of freedom, not by avoiding suffering, but by transforming it from the inside out." Different methods, same truth. All three traditions point to this. Enlightenment isn't an escape. It's about being fully here with a mind that's unshaken, unchained. There's a powerful image that captures this: the lotus. It doesn't grow on icy mountain peaks. It rises from the mud, and yet it doesn't carry the smell of mud. It lives in the dark, but blooms bright and clean. That's the symbol of awakening. Not leaving the world, but rising free within it. And when we understand that, we stop asking, "How can I escape suffering?" and start asking, "How can I show up fully in this life and still remain at peace within?" 9. Each person has a different capacity. Throughout his 45 years of teaching, the Buddha met people from all walks of life: kings and beggars, scholars and illiterates, murderers seeking redemption, grieving mothers clinging to hope. And what people admired wasn't just the wisdom he offered, it was how skillfully he taught. He didn't give the same teaching to everyone. There was no one-size-fits-all doctrine, no single correct answer for every seeker. Instead, he taught according to each person's capacity, their situation, their needs, not because he was inconsistent, but because he understood deeply. Human minds are different, and the path to freedom can't be just one narrow road. Imagine 3 people lost in a desert. One is parched with thirst, one is terrified of the dark, the third has an injured foot. If you hand all 3 a flashlight, who are you actually helping? The Buddha didn't give the same tool to everyone. He gave exactly what that person needed to take their next step. That's why the 3 main traditions of Buddhism exist today not as divisions, but as living expressions of compassion. A flexible, wise response that's allowed people across ages, cultures, and lifestyles to access the path of awakening. To the analytical mind, he gave clear, methodical teachings, cause and effect, suffering, and the end of suffering. To the emotionally intuitive, he shared stories, symbols, and metaphors that touched the heart. And for those with deeper spiritual capacity, he offered profound meditative practices and powerful visualization methods. All of this shows one thing: Buddhism has never been about fixed forms. It's a flowing river, always adapting, always evolving, as long as it helps beings find peace, clarity, and return to their true self. And maybe, especially today, when so many people feel lost in a flood of options and information, it helps to remember this. The Buddha taught many paths, not to confuse us, but so that everyone could find a doorway that fits their heart. Because no one is required to be someone else's copy, and no one gets left behind just because they walk a path that looks different. 10. Mahāyāna teaches that nirvana and samsara aren't really two separate worlds. There's something beautifully profound in the Mahāyāna tradition of Buddhism, something that can feel like a deep comfort to those of us who are just trying to make it through life. Nirvana and samsara are not two separate places. They're not opposites on a map. They're simply two ways of seeing the same reality. That might sound confusing at first, right? Most of us grew up with the idea that samsara is suffering the cycle of birth, aging, illness, and death, something we're supposed to escape. And nirvana? That's peace, the end of all craving, the end of becoming, a place where all the pain is gone. But Mahāyāna doesn't stop there. It asks a deeper question. If your mind is full of anger, confusion, and craving, even if you're in some version of paradise, can you really be at peace? And on the flip side, if your heart is calm, open, and free from attachment even in the middle of chaos, could that not already be nirvana? There's a line in the sutras that says, "When deluded, we see the world. When awakened, the world sees us." That's the essence of it. Mahāyāna points out that suffering doesn't live in the world, it lives in how we relate to the world. When the mind is clouded, everything feels like a burden. But when the mind is awake, even a falling leaf, a glance, or a single breath can become a gateway to freedom. There's a story about Asanga, a great Mahāyāna teacher. He practiced for years, trying to find nirvana, but still felt stuck in sorrow. One day, while sweeping the courtyard, something clicked. He paused and realized, what I've been searching for has been right here all along, in this very act. From that moment, the yard was no longer just a yard. The world wasn't just pain anymore. It had transformed because his way of seeing had transformed. These days, so many of us think, once things settle down, once the job is stable, once the kids grow up, once life gets easier, then I'll practice Buddhism. But Mahāyāna tells us there's no need to wait. Nirvana doesn't live in the future. It's right here in this moment if the mind knows how to come home to itself. It's not about finding an escape. It's about learning to see the world through new eyes. And when your way of seeing changes, the world changes too. That's the beauty of Mahāyāna. It doesn't ask you to leave the world behind. It invites you to show up more fully, to live more deeply, love more openly, and recognize that heaven or hell doesn't live out there. 11. Theravāda has deep roots in Southeast Asia. If you ever visit countries like Sri Lanka, Thailand, Laos, or Myanmar, one thing becomes clear right away. Buddhism there isn't just a religion, it's a way of life. It's the rhythm of the community, the quiet foundation behind daily routines. It's the light that touches even the smallest gestures. In these places, Theravāda, the path of the elders, isn't confined to books or temples. It lives in the way people speak, how they walk, how they raise their kids. Elders teach children. Speak gently, it plants good seeds. Keeping precepts isn't about fear or obligation. It's the ground for peaceful living. Going to the temple isn't just a ritual, it's a way to return to yourself after a long, messy week. Theravāda didn't take root here by accident. It focuses on ethics, concentration, and wisdom, guiding people to liberation through their own body, speech, and mind. It doesn't rely on miracles. It doesn't point fingers outward. It says, start right here, with you. In the quiet monasteries of Sri Lanka or the deep forests of Thailand, monks sit for hours in silent meditation. There's no fanfare, no elaborate performances, just the stillness deep enough to reflect the mind, and from that stillness, they learn to walk upright in the world, not blown around by life's winds. There's a touching image. Every morning, lines of monks walk silently through towns with their alms bowls. They don't beg. They don't feel owed. They simply walk, offering people a chance to give, to open their hearts. The lay people don't offer food to earn merit points, they give because it nourishes generosity. And that's what creates such a strong, natural bond between the spiritual and the everyday. Theravāda doesn't aim to change the outer world. First, it teaches people to change how they see the world. When the mind is calm, life gets less turbulent. When actions are mindful, society becomes more balanced. From those quiet practitioners, a gentle order arises, not one imposed by rules, but born from a deep understanding of cause and effect, suffering, and its end. And maybe it's this steady, humble, down-to-earth spirit that's allowed Theravāda to endure for over 2,000 years through history's storms and the fast pace of the modern world. 12. Vajrayāna might be small in numbers, but it's rich in skillful means. In today's world, where time feels like a luxury, more and more people are longing for a path to peace, not in the next 10 lifetimes, but right here, in this very life. That's where Vajrayāna, the diamond vehicle, quietly shines. Compared to the two larger Buddhist traditions, Theravāda and Mahāyāna, Vajrayāna may have fewer followers. But when it comes to depth, creativity, and spiritual technology, it's a hidden treasure chest. Vajrayāna doesn't just talk about liberation as some far-off concept. It invites practitioners to actually step into transformation not someday, but right in the middle of everyday life. No need to suppress emotions, reject desires, or run from the dark corners of the mind. Instead, it teaches you how to use those very things, anger, fear, craving, as fuel for awakening. A Vajrayāna practitioner might visualize themselves as a Buddha not out of fantasy, but to awaken the innate Buddhahood within. They chant mantras not to ask for miracles, but to harmonize their inner energy, purify the mind, and return to the present moment. They create mandalas not just as art, but as living maps of the inner world, drawn one sacred detail at a time. One of the most powerful symbols in Vajrayāna is fire. Fire can destroy, but it can also melt ice, give warmth, and light up the dark. Vajrayāna takes the strongest human energies, often labeled dangerous, and teaches how to transform them into wisdom and compassion. Sound intense? It is. This path isn't for those who just want to practice on the surface. It's for people ready to go deep, with courage, commitment, and guidance from qualified teachers who've walked the path themselves. Why is it called the diamond vehicle? Because like a diamond, it's unbreakable and it cuts straight through illusion. But it also requires sharpness, discipline, and a heart brave enough to face itself with no sugarcoating. Most importantly, Vajrayāna doesn't promise to take you somewhere else. It shows you that awakening can happen right here, right now, in this body, this life. 13. In a globally connected world, Buddhist students can explore many paths. Never in history has the path to the Dharma been so close. With just a smartphone and a swipe, anyone today can access countless teachings from Theravāda's insight meditation, to Mahāyāna's bodhisattva path, to Vajrayāna's deep transformative practices. You could be sitting in a coffee shop in Los Angeles, listening to a Thai monk's Dharma talk, reading a Tibetan scripture, and then chanting a Sanskrit mantra to Avalokiteshvara before bed. The spiritual world is no longer limited by geography, borders, or language. But within that convenience lies a challenge. With so many options, the most common trap is sampling everything and committing to nothing. One day it's mindfulness meditation. Next day it's bodhisattva visualization. Then mantra chanting. Everything seems meaningful. Everything feels right, but after a while, many still feel stuck, still anxious, still outside the very peace they're searching for. It's like planting 10 kinds of seeds in dry soil, but not watering any of them deeply enough, nothing grows. In Buddhism, what truly matters isn't how many teachings you know, it's how deeply you practice. The Dharma isn't a collection of spiritual facts to memorize. It's a path to walk, step by step, breath by breath, choice by choice. No matter what tradition you follow, or what language you chant in, if you don't bring the teachings into your speech, your thoughts, your daily life, it all stays on the surface, or worse, becomes just another layer of ego. As one meditation master once said, "One practice done deeply is worth more than 100 you never live." That wisdom may be even more relevant now in the digital age than ever before. Yes, the world has opened thousands of doors to the Dharma. But your job isn't to walk through all of them. Your job is to find one that resonates with your heart. Step through it, stay, and nurture it with patience, humility, and sincerity. And sometimes, the treasure you've been chasing isn't in some shiny new method, but waiting in that very first teaching that once moved your heart, just waiting for you to return and go deeper. 14. One of Mahāyāna's greatest strengths? Its remarkable ability to adapt. When a river flows into new land, it doesn't fight to keep its original shape. It curves with the terrain, seeps into the soil, blends with the climate, and sometimes splits into many streams to nourish unfamiliar fields. That's the spirit of Mahāyāna, the great vehicle of Buddhism. One of the reasons Mahāyāna was able to spread and take root so deeply in countries like China, Japan, and Korea is its graceful, intelligent way of adapting without losing its core. When Buddhism entered China, it didn't shut itself off from Confucianism or Taoism. It listened, it engaged in dialogue, and eventually, it blossomed into something new, a kind of flower that grew from within the Chinese soul. That's how Chan Buddhism, Zen's predecessor, was born, a tradition that emphasized direct experience over scriptures, presence over philosophy. In Japan, that Zen spirit became sharp and elegant, like a single brushstroke in calligraphy. Everyday actions like making tea, arranging flowers, or walking quietly became living meditations. There was no need to renounce the world. Life itself became the meditation hall. In Korea, where family and community are central, Mahāyāna found its rhythm in that collective heartbeat. Temples became not only places of worship, but also centers of culture, education, and moral teaching, where people came not just to pray, but to grow as human beings. Later on, Pure Land Buddhism emerged, offering a path for those who couldn't spend long hours in meditation or leave worldly life behind. Just chanting the name of Amitabha Buddha with faith and sincerity could open the way to a peaceful rebirth. It wasn't dumbing down the path, it was opening the door wide so no one was left out. Then came the Lotus Sutra schools, with a bold message. Every sentient being has Buddha nature. No one is beyond redemption. A child, a criminal, an uneducated villager, each one has the seed of awakening within, just waiting to bloom. You could say Mahāyāna is like a door that always stays open. But just because it's open doesn't mean it's shallow. It holds tight to the essence of compassion and wisdom and expresses it in countless ways, depending on who's receiving it. Because of this flexibility, Mahāyāna didn't just survive when entering major cultures, it became part of their very fabric. It didn't remain foreign, it became local, human, deeply felt. If you've ever sipped Japanese tea, watched cherry blossoms fall, or stood in silence inside a Korean temple in autumn, you've probably touched the spirit of Mahāyāna not through words, but through a quiet, living presence. 15. The Buddhist canon was first written down in Sri Lanka. Some moments in history seem quiet, but they end up shaping the future for thousands of years. One such moment happened over 2 millennia ago on a small island in the Indian Ocean called Sri Lanka. It was there, for the first time ever, that the Buddha's teachings, which had been passed down orally for generations, were fully written down. And that simple act didn't just mark a shift in language. It was a turning point in preserving awakened wisdom for the whole world. Imagine this. Nearly 400 years after the Buddha's passing, everything the discourses, the monastic rules, the deep psychological insights still lived only in memory. Thousands of monks recited and memorized every line, every word, with deep reverence. But war, political unrest, and social upheaval were putting that oral tradition in danger. So in Sri Lanka, a stronghold of Theravāda Buddhism, the elders gathered and made a bold decision. They began writing down the entire teachings on palm leaves, in the Pali language. And just like that, the Tipitaka was born the 3 baskets of Buddhist scripture: the Sutta, discourses, Vinaya, monastic code, and Abhidhamma, higher teachings. In that moment, writing wasn't just a tool for memory. It became a way to safeguard truth so wisdom would no longer depend solely on human recollection, but could live on through time. And ever since, the Pali Canon has been the backbone of the Theravāda tradition. For over 2,000 years, it's helped millions of people access the Buddha's original teachings to live more ethically, to develop meditation, and to look deeply into suffering, impermanence, and non-self. And ultimately, to walk the path of liberation. What's remarkable is that even though the Tipitaka was written in the 1st century BCE, it's still recited, studied, and practiced daily in Theravāda monasteries, from ancient temples in Sri Lanka to meditation centers in the US, Europe, and Australia. It's not just a museum piece, it's alive. It still speaks to the real suffering of modern life. The Buddha once said, "The Dharma is timeless." And the Pali Canon living, breathing, evolving is proof of that. 16. Some ancient sutras don't belong to any one school, and that's a beautiful thing. There's something fascinating about the history of Buddhism that not many people talk about. Archaeologists have unearthed ancient sutras written on crumbling palm leaves, tucked away in mountain caves, written in Old Gandhari or Sanskrit that don't clearly belong to any one tradition. They aren't clearly Theravāda. They're not fully Mahāyāna or Vajrayāna either. These sutras feel like raw, vibrant fragments, like puzzle pieces from an earlier time, reminding us that early Buddhism wasn't rigid or locked into systems. It flowed like a natural stream, adapting to the needs of each person, each land, each moment in history. Some folks imagine that the Buddha laid out a single, fixed philosophical structure, and his disciples just copied and followed it. But that's far from the truth. The Buddha taught with remarkable flexibility and a lot of spontaneity. To the thinker, he offered logic. To the quiet one, he offered silence. To the broken-hearted, he told stories. To a butcher, he spoke of putting down the knife. No one was excluded. There was no one-size-fits-all formula. And these sutras that don't fit neatly into any one sect, they're living proof of that spirit. They remind us, the Dharma was never meant to be a closed system. It's a living treasury meant not to preserve dogma, but to offer what each person truly needs to awaken. Think of the Buddha teaching impermanence. Sometimes he spoke through a falling leaf. Other times, through the grief of a mother who lost her child. And sometimes, he just looked into someone's eyes and said nothing. The form wasn't what mattered. The inner transformation was. So when we find these outside-the-box teachings, we don't need to fear them. We can see them as small branches from a great tree each, carrying the same sap, each reaching toward the same light. 17. The Buddha's teachings were never meant to be frozen in stone. Here's something that's easy to forget when walking the Buddhist path. The Buddha didn't come to give us a rigid belief system. He didn't show up to hand out doctrine. He came because he saw suffering and, out of deep compassion and wisdom, he pointed a way out. In one famous teaching, the Buddha said, "My Dharma is like a raft to cross the river. Don't carry it on your back after reaching the other shore." What does that mean? It means the teachings aren't here to be worshipped or debated endlessly. They're here to be lived, to help us truly transform suffering in our everyday lives. A person who's anxious doesn't need a lecture on the Four Noble Truths. They need mindful breathing. Someone consumed by anger doesn't need a talk on compassion. They need a moment of stillness before speaking words that might hurt. And someone afraid of loss doesn't need theories about impermanence. They need to know impermanence isn't a threat. It's the heart of life's renewal. That's the living Dharma. Its strength lies in its flexibility, not because it's watered down, but because it meets us where we are. The Buddha didn't repeat the same lesson for every student. For someone grieving their mother, he used a handful of ashes. For someone furious, he remained silent. For someone poor, he gave the gift of offering a single bowl of rice that opened their heart. And today, we carry on that spirit. We chant, we meditate, we study. But if what we study doesn't help us breathe when stressed, or listen to a loved one, or accept life when it doesn't go our way, then maybe we're still standing on the riverbank, thinking we've crossed. Someone once asked, "Does the Dharma change over time?" The answer, the essence doesn't, but the way it's shared and practiced must stay alive. Not because the Dharma is weak, but because people and circumstances keep changing. Wisdom knows how to respond. The Dharma isn't a museum. It's a lamp. And that lamp only matters if we have the courage to walk the path it lights up. Thank you for staying with me on this journey. Together, we've explored the three great traditions of Buddhism Theravāda, Mahāyāna, and Vajrayāna. Each one offers a different light, but they all share one truth, that liberation comes from transforming the root of our suffering from, awakening our mind and heart. Whether you're drawn to the path of personal wisdom, boundless compassion, or deep inner transformation, at the core, it's all about awakening, about stopping and seeing clearly, about having the courage to meet reality with a steady heart and an open soul. No path is higher or lower, only the path that fits your life, your questions, your deepest longing. The Buddha didn't teach many paths because he lacked clarity. He taught many because he had great compassion, like a wise teacher handing the right key to each locked heart. These three paths are like three trails up a single mountain. The view might be different, the steps may vary, but if you walk with sincerity, discipline, and humility, the summit is the same. The self falls away. The heart awakens. But in our modern world where teachings are a click away and spiritual information floods our screens, we face a serious question. Will this blending of traditions dilute the power of true transformation? Or will your awareness, your choice, your sincere practice make all the difference? This age we live in is unlike any other. No more boundaries of geography or tradition, but that means your roots must go deeper, not just to learn more, but to live deeper. So now, pause. Listen inside. Which path is calling you? Is it the quiet mindfulness of each step? The compassion that stirs when you see someone suffering? Or the fire of transformation facing your shadows head on, here and now? Whichever it is, if it's honest, it will lead you back to yourself. If this video spoke to you, please subscribe to BUDDHISM Seeds. Like, share it with someone who may need it, and drop a comment below. Tell us which path you're walking, or what touched you today. Wishing you peace in every breath, every thought, every choice. See you in the next video.